She signed the divorce papers with a smirk, as if she'd just won the lottery. But I wasn't the one losing. Avery leaned back in her seat like a victorious actress taking in her final applause. Her pen, a sleek Mont Blanc with her initials engraved in rose gold, tapped once against the polished oak table before she pressed it to the dotted line. She didn't glance at me. Not even once, though she made sure her smirk was angled just enough for the court reporter to catch. The pen moved swiftly. One flick, one name, one final flourish, and it was done. The sound of her laugh, sharp, loud, sliced through the quiet like a blade. It wasn't the kind of laugh people share when they're relieved. No, this was the kind of laugh people save for when they think they've won. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I breathed, once, through my nose, and watched the woman who used to sleep next to me for 7 years turn her chair as if the moment were hers to savor. My heartbeat stayed steady, even as Tanner Griggs, her overpaid, over-slicked attorney, began to shuffle papers like a magician after a trick. "Well," he said, puffing out his chest, "I suppose that settles it. Congratulations, Ms. Dalton." He smiled like he had personally orchestrated her independence. She chuckled, flipping her hair over one shoulder. "Feels lighter already," she said. Renee Kaplan, seated beside me, didn't move. Her hands were folded neatly. Her heels crossed, face unreadable. She hadn't spoken much all morning, not because she didn't have anything to say, but because silence was our sharpest blade. Tanner took that silence as submission. "Let's be honest," he said, addressing me now, his tone syrupy. "You'll be more comfortable without all that pressure. Mr. Blake, simpler life, less responsibility. I hear studio apartments in Queens are cozy this time of year." He chuckled. Avery didn't correct him. I reached into my leather folder. My hand moved slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a small white envelope. Unmarked, sealed. I handed it to Renee without saying a word. She didn't open it, just slipped it into her case like it was a menu from lunch. Avery raised one perfectly manicured eyebrow. "What's that?" she asked. "Just paperwork," Renee replied. "Calm. Final submissions for the court." Avery's eyes flickered, briefly, but she smiled again. Lips red, sharp like a wound. "Well," she said, rising, "this was fun." She leaned closer to me, her voice low. "Enjoy your little apartment, Ethan." I kept my eyes on the table for a beat too long. When I finally looked up, she was halfway to the door, hips swinging like she was walking a runway. Outside, the drizzle had picked up. I could see it spatter against the window near the clerk's bench. Gray sky, gray walls, the cold fluorescent hum of the courtroom. It could have been a funeral. Maybe it was. There was a whisper of motion in the gallery, someone checking their phone. Probably reading one of the first alerts going out. Breaking. NYC power couple finalized divorce. Of course, the press would call us that. Power couple, even if only one of us was ever credited with the power. Tanner swaggered behind her, phone already out, probably texting one of the gossip blogs. He lived for this, the optics, the drama, the narrative he thought he was controlling. I stared at her retreating back, thinking, "You just signed your surrender." She introduced me as the guy who makes robots. I smiled, like I always did. The rooftop twinkled with curated light, faux string bulbs and recycled chandeliers casting gold across every glass. Every face. Midtown shimmered in the distance, a mirror of the elegance around us. It was October 2021, the PR Awards Gala, and Avery Dalton was in her natural habitat, admired, amplified, untouchable. She wore midnight blue, not black, never black, too harsh for camera flashes. Her voice flowed through the crowd like a master conductor guiding an orchestra of applause and laughter. When she spoke, people leaned in. When she laughed, they laughed louder. "And this," she said, turning toward me with a smile that could slice steel, "is Ethan, my husband. He makes robots." There it was, the summary of my life's work, 2 decades of code, machine learning, sleepless nights boiled down to a punchline. I smiled, like I always did. People laughed. One man, CEO of some viral startup, raised his glass and said, "Avery saves brands. Ethan builds their overlords. That's balance, right?" Laughter again. Avery touched my arm lightly, as if I were some accessory to the joke, then turned back to her circle. I remained beside her, half visible in photos, fully invisible in spirit. Kendall slinked toward us with a drink in hand, her voice already tuned to broadcast level. "You're live, darling," she whispered into her phone camera. Avery Dalton, queen of PR, and her charming husband, Mr. Background noise. I turned my head slightly, enough to acknowledge the lens, then looked away. There was nothing to say. My silence had long been the safest thing I owned. Later, I stood by the glass railing, watching taxis below blink like fireflies. A waiter passed, offering champagne. I declined. Bubbles had a way of floating illusions. This evening didn't need more of them. The laughter inside rose and fell in waves. Avery was telling her favorite anecdote again. How I once soldered a prototype in pajamas while she prepped for a campaign crisis at 3 a.m. He looked like a sleep-deprived mad scientist. She'd say, while I was rescuing a global brand from a tweet storm. The crowd roared. I caught my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling glass. Tuxedo pressed, hair combed, face neutral. No one saw the way my fingers curled inward at my side. Avery posed near the step and repeat banner, surrounded by award winners and stylists. A photographer from Vogue stepped in. "Just you," he said to her. She didn't look at me, didn't say anything, just tilted her chin and smiled like she had been waiting for this all night. The flash clicked 3 times. I wasn't in any of them. I slipped away before the next speech. Made my way into the hallway restroom. It was quiet, sterile. I stood before the mirror and whispered to myself, barely moving my lips. I was never in the picture. My voice didn't echo. It didn't need to. The words settled somewhere deep, under my ribs, where the smiles used to live. Back in the hallway, the sounds of celebration spilled through marble and glass. I sat on a bench beside a fern and pulled out my phone. My fingers moved without plan, lines, curves, shapes. The screen began to fill with something new. Not a robot, not a prototype, a system. He opens his phone and begins sketching the first Verdant AI blueprint. Every insult became a line of code. Every slight, a feature. The screen's glow was the only light in the room. Cold winter air seeped through the barely sealed windows. But I didn't feel it. My fingers moved faster than my thoughts, chasing an idea that had started with a smirk at a rooftop gala and grown teeth in the silence of our home. While Avery chased headlines, I chased architecture, one that didn't need applause to function. The apartment around me was dark, save for the sliver of hallway light that cut under the office door. It wasn't even a real room, just a converted storage space with a second-hand desk and a sagging chair. But in the blue light of my screen, it was the ground floor of a future empire. Verdant AI. That name stared back at me from the Delaware business registration portal. The LLC was official now. Clean, silent, hidden beneath layers of generic shell names. No one, not Avery, not Tanner, not even Kendall, would bother looking. No one assumed a man, glued to his laptop, was laying the foundation for disruption. A ping broke the stillness. "Lena, video call. Still coding?" she asked, rubbing her eyes with the back of her hand. Her dorm room looked even more cramped than mine. "Always," I said. "You should sleep, or at least blink." "I'll blink when Verdant does." She smiled, that crooked, stubborn grin that said she knew better than to argue. I transferred the funds. I blinked for real then. "You sure? It's only money," she said. "Besides, what's the point of a scholarship if I can't bet on my brother building a future?" The number floated in my inbox, $50. I exhaled. Another window popped up. AJ's Slack message. "Pipeline is stable. India side alpha looks good. Shipping model next?" AJ was a freelance prodigy from Mumbai. I'd found him through an obscure open-source project and pitched him the vision in one encrypted call. He didn't ask many questions. Just delivered. "Shipping model next." I typed, "Let's make the system anticipate delays before they happen." While Avery sculpted campaigns that made failing brands look noble, I was building a neural optimizer that predicted warehouse breakdowns before they reached a loading dock. Quiet, ruthless, efficient. Midnight gave way to 2 a.m. My codebase doubled in size. I stood once, stretched, and heard footsteps approach. Knock knock. "Avery, you're still glued to that laptop?" I didn't turn. "Still fixing the world, apparently." She scoffed. "Well, try not to wake the neighbors with your genius." She walked away before I could reply, heels clicking like punctuation on her disdain. I sat back down and stared at the graphs lining my screen, nodes, paths, probabilistic outputs. I clicked submit on the prototype test. Minutes passed. The email arrived. Verdant AI, beta logistics proposal accepted. $1.2 million contract pending final terms. I didn't smile. I just stared at the figure until it stopped feeling like a dream. Avery would never understand. Kendall would mock it. But Lena would nod. Ajay would refine it. And me? I would remember every moment in her shadow and turn it into structure. My phone buzzed. Renee Kaplan. Phase 2. Begin legal structures. The name pulsed on my screen like a signal flare in the dark. I wasn't escaping her shadow, I was building my own. The cafe was quiet. One of those Soho hideaways with matte black ceilings and no music. Where every whisper sounded like a secret. Renee stirred her espresso twice. Then set the spoon down parallel to the saucer. Surgical, like everything she did. Across from her, I watched the foam dissolve into black. Cayman Islands, she said softly. If anyone digs, they'll find a firm named Alabaster Reef Holdings. A marine real estate shell. That's Verdant's parent, at least legally. And the trust? She nodded. Yours. Revocable. Layered. Firewall after firewall. Only Lena and I can penetrate it. And we won't. On the screen between us. A tab blinked. Verdant AI, valuation, $87 million. It wasn't public. It wasn't visible. But it was real. We had traction, burn rate discipline, and a product that shaved 11% off shipping inefficiencies for the right clients. Lena's email came in mid-meeting. We're now 17 engineers across 4 time zones. Everyone signed NDA 3.2. AJ's leading architecture now. It's happening. Ethan. I let the words settle before replying. I didn't need to. The momentum spoke for itself. Renee handed me a sealed envelope. New equity options. In case we need to dilute fast. Yamazaki's people want assurance. Are they nervous? They're Japanese. They're always nervous. She smirked, but then grew serious. Yamazaki asked, who is the real CEO? I sipped my lukewarm Americano. What did you tell him? She leaned in. I said, you don't need to know. Outside, people moved like abstract brushstrokes, too absorbed in their screens or conversations to notice the quiet empire being drafted inside this cafe. Verdant's beta models had outperformed Amazon's internal routing systems in blind A/B tests. We were being courted by firms, funds, ghosts in suits with no LinkedIn presence. None of them knew my name. And I preferred it that way. Renee's phone buzzed once. She glanced down, then turned it to face me. Confirmed. $5.7 million seed round, signed. Wire processing. The number didn't move me. Not anymore. It was just oxygen. She leaned back. You're the ghost founder. The quiet architect. This only works if your ego stays in check. I buried that the day she laughed in court. Renee looked at me for a long moment. The kind where silence weighs more than conversation. Then she asked, when do we go public? I stirred my coffee once. Slowly. After the fall. She posted a boomerang of her signing the final deal. The caption read, he's sweet. But I'm done mothering. The screen lit up in my hand before I even heard the ping. Avery's post sat at the top of my feed. Framed in soft pinks and dusk light. Her signature boomerang, pen to paper. Lean back, smirk. The sunset behind her was real. But the symbolism was staged. Everything always was. The caption shimmered in polished sarcasm, he's sweet. But I'm done mothering. Hashtag starting fresh, hashtag brand rebirth. Comments poured in, blue checks. Stylists, influencers, Yas Queen energy. Onward and upward fire. Love that outfit, divorce looks good on you. I closed the app without blinking. From the other room, I heard her voice rise with Kendall's. Wine glasses clinked. Laughter bloomed. They were celebrating my absence in real time. Earlier that day, she'd revoked our joint credit card. Said it didn't make sense anymore. Though her tone carried the real message. She tossed the shredded card onto the table like it was confetti. You'll have to budget like a student now, she said, smiling into her coffee mug. You still have ramen recipes, right? I nodded. Always. The contract was slid across the table next. Her attorney's watermark gleamed faintly beneath the fluorescence. She tapped her manicured finger on the line. Sign. Clean slate. I've got a campaign launching next week, divorced. Empowered. Balanced. It's going to be big. I signed. No hesitation. Just a signature. Then I stood, grabbed my phone, and walked into the bedroom. In the corner of the room, past the minimalist furniture and curated bookshelves, I typed one sentence into a secure message. File public declaration March 3rd. Sent. No reply. Renee never replied when it wasn't safe. Her silence meant motion. Avery uploaded her post minutes later. I watched it get reposted. Dissected. Exalted. Her PR team had timed it perfectly. Skyline golden. Hashtags optimized. Outfit curated for empathy and strength. She was dancing in the narrative again. Convinced the final nail had been driven. That she'd buried the past like a dog buries a toy, forgotten. Irrelevant. Replaced by shinier distractions. But I wasn't in the grave. I was in the blueprints. Later, after Kendall left and Avery settled into her skincare routine, I stood by the window. The city blinked back at me. Oblivious. My reflection, half shadow, half calm, hovered against the glass. The voicemail came in just before midnight. Renee's voice. Clear and quiet. Everything's in place. Let her smile for now. She practiced her monologue in front of a mirror. I practiced silence. Avery stood in front of her full-length mirror, adjusting the drape of her cream blazer for the 7th time. Her lips curled slightly as she whispered lines to herself. Testing tone. Angle. Sympathy. This wasn't just court, this was theater. And she'd always been the lead actress. I did everything, kept the lights on. Saved his name from becoming a footnote. She said, smoothing her hair. Some men dream in code. I had to live in reality. Kendall sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through her phone and nodding on beat. Good, but tilt your chin higher when you say, reality. It'll hit harder for the cameras. This isn't a press conference. No, Kendall replied without looking up. But it will feel like one. They laughed. Avery turned sideways, checked her profile, then pulled out a pair of pearl earrings. Classic. Sympathetic. Polished. The image of a woman wronged but rising. She had it all mapped out. Meanwhile, across the city, Renee's office buzzed with none of the same energy. No stylists. No warm lighting. Just glass, steel, and an air of consequence. Ethan sat across from her. Hands steady. A sealed portfolio resting between them. No facial reactions. Renee said, her voice low and even. You are not surprised. You are not vindictive. You are simply factual. He nodded. She handed him the file. Review it again. Inside. Account ledgers. Asset summaries. Offshore holdings. Trust structures. Valuation estimates. Verdant AI's current net worth, $48.6 million. Hidden in plain sight. Legally fortified. Structurally bulletproof. She turned a page. All of this becomes real tomorrow. You speak only when asked. You make no eye contact. You let the numbers do what her words cannot. He didn't answer. Just ran his fingers along the edge of the affidavit beneath the portfolio. Everything they'd prepared came down to one document. One signature. One moment. Sign, Renee said. He did. Her voice softened. Almost inaudible. Tomorrow. Your silence ends. Elsewhere. Kendall uploaded a filtered photo to her story. It was Avery's hand holding a coffee. Her engagement ring now vanished, replaced by fresh manicured nails. Tomorrow we celebrate #freedom. The caption read. It had hearts. Champagne emojis. The city below didn't know it was on the verge of irony. But the mirror in Avery's room, witness to every line rehearsed, held the truth in its reflection. She was preparing for applause. She didn't realize the curtain was closing. She laughed again, louder this time. The judge didn't. Avery sat tall in the courtroom seat, glancing up as Tanner wrapped up his rehearsed monologue on Ethan's supposed lack of income. It's clear, he said, voice smooth as honey. Mr. Blake contributes little more than charm and quiet support. His earning report confirms it. The crowd chuckled. Avery smiled, and even the judge gave a courteous nod. But the judge's attention shifted when Renee rose, calm as midnight, and placed a thick portfolio on the lectern. She said nothing. She didn't need to. The courtroom went silent. I stood, heart still measured, nearly invisible in the room's cold light. Renee handed me the portfolio. I opened it, then quietly handed pages to the bailiff. Each page was crisp with truth, audited valuations, spreadsheets, offshore trust filings, share distributions. The air felt heavier with every handoff. The judge, stern and fair, accepted the documents. His fingers paused on the cover page. Silence held for a breath that felt like an eternity. Then he began to read. Voice deliberate, each syllable precise. Mr. Blake holds a 61% controlling interest in Verdant AI. Currently valued at $78,400,000. Mr. Blake is therefore entitled to. His voice faltered for the briefest moment before continuing. An equitable share. It rippled through the room like a shockwave. Audio recorders clicked. Cameras swiveled. Reporters scribbled furiously. Even Avery looked away, her confident posture flickering. Tanner's jaw tightened, his smug veneer cracking. Avery's breath hitched, a single, faint gasp, eyes widening. The applause she expected, the whisper of admiration she courted, it all dissolved into disbelief. The judge folded the portfolio gently and looked at Avery. His voice, measured but firm. We will need to revisit the division terms. A hush fell, not just a pause in noise, but a vacuum that swallowed everything Avery had built. She, who'd laughed in triumph moments ago, now sat vulnerable, her power drained in the wake of undeniable proof. I stayed perfectly still, standing in my silence as the courtroom recalibrated around me. Their eyes, flashlights searching the shadows, found me. For the first time, I took up space. Court stands in recess, Judge Wallace said. He rose slowly. The gallery began to stir. Avery's face was pale, almost as though she'd seen a ghost. Tanner's shoulders slumped. Renee remained motionless, a quiet sentinel beside me. I exhaled, but no one heard it. The room pulsed with tension aftershock. I wasn't laughing. I didn't need to. Silence had said it all. Cliffhanger. Avery goes pale. Judge, we will need to revisit the division terms. She used to say I was invisible. Now she couldn't look away. The bar on the Upper East Side buzzed with its usual blend of muted jazz and curated whispers. Avery sat in a corner booth, her designer coat still draped around her shoulders like armor. The screen of her phone glared back at her, post after post, each one eroding the narrative she'd spent years mastering. Hashtag Gaslight Queen no more. Hashtag Verdant Victory. Hashtag PR Queen uncrowned. Her last photo, smiling, pen poised in the courtroom, was now a meme. Someone had captioned it, "When you think you buried him but he built an empire underground." She scrolled past it, then again, then paused. Her thumb trembled. Across from her, Kendall sipped a dirty martini without saying a word. For the first time in years, her signature commentary was absent. Her silence said more than any spin could. Avery tried anyway. I mean, it's just timing. She muttered, eyes on the marble tabletop. He must have hidden it. I didn't even know he. Kendall didn't respond, didn't nod, just stared into her glass like it held the future. Or maybe the past. A shadow moved near the bar. A woman, maybe late 20s, shoulder-length hair pulled into a messy braid. Simple black dress, confident posture. Lena. She stepped up to the table without hesitation and set a whiskey sour in front of herself. To underestimated brothers, she said, raising her glass with a slow smirk. Avery blinked. I'm sorry, who? Lena Blake, she replied. You might remember the scholarship you said Ethan should give up for a real job. I made that scholarship possible. You're welcome. Avery's face tightened. You have no idea what you're talking about. Lena leaned in, voice calm but cutting. Actually, I do. And the whole city will tomorrow. With one smooth motion, Avery knocked Lena's glass across the table. It shattered on the marble, crystal and whiskey pooling like spilled secrets. Gasps from a few nearby tables broke the ambient chatter. Lena didn't flinch. She smiled. Avery stood abruptly, grabbing her coat, heels clicking on the hardwood as she left. Behind her, silence. Not even Kendall followed. Back at her apartment, Avery stared at her reflection in the mirror. The same blazer, the same lipstick, but the woman looking back was off-center. Shaken. She opened Instagram one more time. Scrolled the comments. Every hashtag like a stone thrown through glass. With a final breath, she tapped the menu. Delete account. Are you sure? Yes. The app vanished. Downtown, Ethan's phone buzzed. A private message. No name. Just text. Tomorrow, 7 a.m. New episode of The Industry Truth. The real Ethan Blake. Thought you should know. He stared at it, didn't move, then locked the screen and exhaled. The mirror had cracked, but something else was about to break. I didn't move to run away. I moved to stop looking over my shoulder. The sun in Lisbon didn't apologize for being bold. It spilled across the terracotta rooftops and licked the white walls of the Alfama Quarter in golden strokes. Ethan stood near the edge of a cliff. Sketchbook open, pencil resting between his fingers. The Atlantic shimmered below, not demanding attention but offering space. He hadn't drawn in years. The pages were filled now, not with code or formulas, but arcs of sailboats. Rooftops collapsing into one another. The angles of light at different hours. His fingers moved slowly, deliberately. Each line was a breath unburdened. Behind him, the breeze carried the faint sounds of a street guitarist, and the scent of grilled sardines lingered in the air. Lisbon didn't rush anyone. It waited. A ping came from the phone in his satchel. He glanced at the notification. A digital copy of Forbes EU. Headline centered on Verdant AI's unexpected pivot to renewable logistics. The subtitle quoted Lena, silent genius. Global impact. He smiled. Lena arrived later that afternoon. Hair sun-bleached and messy from travel. She burst into the small apartment with the kind of energy that only belonged to family. "Your porch is too perfect," she announced, throwing her bag down and walking barefoot onto the tiled balcony. "You know that, right? Too perfect for what? For hiding. You're officially ghost legend now. A myth." He laughed. "A real one. A myth with a good espresso machine." She joined him on the terrace, holding 2 glasses of Vinho Verde. "You got a letter today, snail mail. How very analog." He opened it. Inside, a note from a student at MIT. Handwritten, precise cursive. "Your story reached me through a podcast. I thought tech meant noise. You showed it can mean presence. Thank you." No hashtags, no tags, just ink and intent. Later, Ethan logged into a call with Verdant's European team. Faces blinked in, diverse, eager, scattered across time zones. They spoke of renewable pilots in Germany, a logistics reshuffle in Kenya, AI integration for nonprofits. The room they filled wasn't sterile. It buzzed. "We're thinking of hosting something local," one team lead said. "Lisbon Student Forum is asking if we'd send someone." Ethan hesitated. "You don't have to say yes," Lena offered from the couch. He looked out the window. The city curved upward like an open palm. A place that didn't need defending. "I'll speak," he said, "just once." She grinned. "Just once for now." The day settled into night. Streetlights flickered like quiet promises. Ethan's phone buzzed again. He checked the screen and froze. A missed call. Avery Dalton. No message, just the name. Waiting. He didn't call back. Not yet. Some ghosts knock politely before haunting. Justice wasn't loud. It was quiet, firm, and final. Berlin in the summer was a city of second winds. Not as grand as Vienna or as frenzied as New York, but full of motion that didn't need to shout. Verdant HQ sat modestly on the edge of the creative district, an old printing press retrofitted with solar panels and curved glass. No gilded logos, no plaques. Ethan walked through the space in a crisp navy shirt. No tie, sleeves rolled. Around him, engineers debated airflow models. Interns sketched AI neural loops on glass walls. And 2 finance analysts argued over green tokens in 3 languages. No one stared at him. No one bowed, but they moved with a tempo he set. Unconsciously. At the back corner of the open floor, he paused beside a young intern, curly hair, wide eyes, still learning to speak less in meetings. He handed the kid a folded note and said nothing. The intern opened it slowly after Ethan walked away. "Be the person no one sees until it's too late." In the corridor, his phone buzzed again. Avery Dalton. Voicemail. "Can we talk?" He didn't press play. Didn't delete it either. Just let it linger on the screen like the final chapter of a book he'd already finished. The elevator doors opened. He stepped in alone. At the airport lounge later that afternoon, Ethan watched raindrops race down the glass while a delayed departure announcement echoed through the terminal. Lena had texted him earlier, "Don't come back just to prove you left." He smiled. She knew him too well. An assistant from Verdant's Singapore office messaged that their team had already prepared the conference space. The renewable keynote adjusted to Ethan's quieter style. No stage lights, just discussion. On the newsfeed overhead, A blur of entertainment headlines scrolled past. But then, Ethan Blake, the quiet architect of AI's green future. A photo from Lisbon, him walking, sketchbook under one arm. He stood, gathered his satchel, and boarded the flight. 30 minutes later, 30,000 feet in the air, Ethan reclined into his seat and finally closed his eyes. Back on the ground, somewhere on a private account, Avery posted a quote. He never needed revenge, he just needed distance. The post got few likes. But it didn't matter. The plane soared into clouds. Fade to black. She once laughed like the world was hers to choreograph. But in the end, it was silence, his silence, that rewrote the stage. The man she belittled quietly built an empire beneath her heels. And when the curtain fell, the applause wasn't hers. Justice doesn't always arrive in grand gestures, sometimes. It walks in with quiet certainty and changes everything. When injustice is met with quiet resolve, truth becomes the loudest echo in the room. Some victories don't need a spotlight, just a closed door. And a life finally lived on your own terms.